What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Sucker Free Sports Talk. I am your host, Sam James, and this is your Chicago sports talk show for everything Bulls, Bears, and more. Make sure to follow me on all my social media platforms and subscribe to this channel. And on today's episode, we will talk about the Chicago Cubs finally getting going in free agency. We will talk about Illinois basketball beating the number 2 ranked Texas Longhorns. We will talk about the Bears entering a much-needed bye week after another loss to the Packers of Green Bay. But first, we have to talk about the Bulls.
This is a sucker-free sports talk production. Bulls Talk.
The Bulls continue to be inconsistent. The Bulls come back from their road trip. They went 1-4 on that road trip. They went out west. They lost to Sacramento, lost to OKC, Phoenix, and Golden State. That Phoenix game was especially bad. Devin Booker absolutely torched them. Pretty much no faith in this team on a night-to-night basis to get the job done. That last game, Zach LaVine did step it up a little bit. He had a 41-point game against the Kings. That was good to see. He actually has been looking better of late. A little bit more pep in his step and getting up the court good and shooting the ball pretty well. But after that road trip, they return home on Wednesday night and beat the Washington Wizards. Started off the game pretty good, but consistency continues to be a problem for this team. Some bright spots, the big three, they all scored over 20 points. I think that was like only the 4th time they've done that since they've been a trio. That was good to see. The younger pieces, Ayo and Pat Williams, they stepped up too. They added some scoring there off the bench. Pat Williams actually started last night. But those young guys actually played pretty well last night. And then the defense. The defense was good. Defense has been pretty much the only consistent thing throughout the year. They haven't been giving up too many big point games and getting a lot of deflections. That's one of the best things this team does is get a lot of deflections, a lot of steals. Unfortunately, they get too many turnovers off those steals. And then they won the game. They got to win. Wins have been hard to come by this year, so that was good to see for the Bulls. But negatives. Negatives continue to be a problem. Bulls turned the ball over way too much, like I said. Zach LaVine, Caruso had some bad ones in there. Goran Dragic had some bad ones. Just sloppy play, not taking care of the ball. You got to take care of the ball. I think the Wizards had almost 30 points off those turnovers. That's losing basketball right there. Fortunately, it didn't cost them the win. But another negative is DeMar continues to look like a shell of himself from last year. DeMar has not been shooting the ball well of late, not hitting those mid-range shots. He was kind of the catalyst last year, him and Lonzo Ball for a good Bulls team at the start of the year. And he just hasn't really looked like himself. He hasn't been hitting those shots. He hasn't been getting those foul calls. I think teams and defenses have kind of figured out what he's good at and taken that away. And DeMar hasn't made the proper adjustments to pick up on what he was doing last year as an MVP candidate. So DeMar's going to have to step it up. DeMar's going to have to figure out what he can do to help this team and what he can do to turn his season around here. And I thought Patrick Williams missed an opportunity to have a really big game. He had a lot of good drives to the basket, but he left some shots at the rim. I think Pat kind of gets a little nervous there. I don't know if it's a confidence issue. I mean, I know it's a confidence issue, but I don't know if it's Billy Donovan not putting enough confidence in him or if it's from within because he's just not getting the job done at the rim. He loses the ball too much. He gets his shot blocked too much. He needs to slow down, calm down, use his pump fake, and gather himself. He did have a few dunks last night, which I think he should get every game. I think he should have 2 or 3 dunks every game. He did have some of those good plays, but he also left some shots at the rim. So we need Pat to get a little bit better here, and we need Pat to step up. He did start last night against the Wizards, but Billy Donovan said before the game that once Javonte Green is back from injury, Pat will move back to the bench. A move I agree with because I think Pat plays better when he's not playing with DeMar and Zach LaVine at the same time. So those are the negatives. Another negative I thought was Bradley Beal did not play. He did not play in that game last night, and it was a close game. Bulls could have very well lost that game. If Beal plays, I think they do lose that game. Other guys like Porzingis and Kuzma didn't really shoot the ball well, so Bulls kind of dodged a bullet there. They'll move on to play the Dallas Mavericks this Saturday at the United Center. Who knows what happens here? We've seen the Bulls play good against some of these better teams in the East, not the West. You got Luka Doncic coming to town. Luka has been on a tear this year. He is a future MVP. So watch out. We'll see what happens if the Bulls can string together some wins here and build some consistency and not be such an inconsistent, poor team. But we have to look at the bigger picture here. the bigger picture with the Bulls are in one of the worst situations in the league. They are in NBA hell. They aren't one of these teams like OKC or Sacramento with a bunch of young pieces and a bunch of picks going forward. And they're not one of these teams like Milwaukee or Phoenix or Golden State that already have their pieces in place and are contending for a title. They're right in the middle there. They're at the 12th seed right now in the Eastern Conference. And in the short amount of time that Mark Eversley, the GM, and Arturas Karnisovas has been here, the president of basketball operations, they have destroyed the Bulls' future. And they have destroyed the Bulls' future as an NBA contender. They're not a contender this year, like I said, and they've jeopardized their future by trading away most, if not every one of their draft picks going forward. And if you look at this team, Zach and DeMar, they don't complement each other. You traded everything for a big man in Nikola Vucevic, who isn't getting the job done. He's not tough enough to compete with these other NBA centers on a nightly basis. And he just looks like another Paul Gasol to me. One of these guys you bring in, one of these big-name guys that does not get the job done on a night-to-night basis. So, like I said, I think the Bulls are in NBA hell here. I will try to explain to you the Chicago Bulls draft capital going forward. Starting with 2023, the Bulls owe their 2023 pick to the Orlando Magic. If you did not know this, the Bulls do not have a first-round pick in this upcoming draft because they traded it away in a Nikola Vucevic trade. Unless they finish in the top four, it's a top four projected pick. And if it does become a top four projected pick, then it'll move on to 2024. And if the Bulls draft in the top four that year, then it moves on to 2025. Some confusing stuff here with the Bulls draft picks. They also lost their second-round pick to the LA Lakers as part of the Otto Porter trade to the Washington Wizards. Bulls could possibly get another first-round pick from the Portland Trail Blazers as part of the Lowry Markkanen trade, but the Bulls only get that pick if Portland makes the playoffs, which they're projected to right now. They're in the top of the Western Conference, but that kind of looks like a tank team going forward here. We'll see what happens there. 2024, Bulls have their first-round pick in 2024. Currently, that is the only pick the Bulls have because in that second round, that pick belongs to the Pelicans as part of the Lonzo Ball trade. And in 2025, both Bulls picks are traded to the San Antonio Spurs as part of the DeMar DeRozan deal. That's a top 10 projected pick or protected pick. So, like I said, some confusing stuff here. But the big picture, the Bulls pretty much only have one pick these next 3 years. That's if things go as planned and the Bulls are above a top 10 team. But we'll see what happens there. In retrospect, the Bulls only have one draft pick going forward, and what do we have to show for it? A 10-14 team, a despicable team with no heart and a bunch of overpaid underachievers, a coach who was given a phantom contract extension in the offseason, and a bunch of young promising pieces that are being wasted, like Patrick Williams and Ayo Dosunmu. I've never been more disgusted with a Bulls team than this year's team. They are so hard to watch. On a night-to-night basis, you don't know what you're going to get. All you know you're going to get is a bunch of guys playing with no heart and a coach who's not getting the most out of his team. And I don't trust this front office going forward. I don't trust them any more than I trusted Garpax in the past. Look what they've done. Look what they've done in their time here. In a year and a half, they've kind of destroyed the Bulls' future, traded away all their picks, and a team that sits at 10-14. And at this point, do we really trust this front office to blow it up and rebuild? I don't, but we'll see what happens going forward. All right, let's get into some who's hot and who's not around the NBA. Starting with who's hot, I'm going with Anthony Davis. If you haven't seen Anthony Davis of late, he's been on an absolute tear. Over his last 8 games, full games played, I know that last game, the last 2 games actually, he's been out with flu-like symptoms. But before that, his last 8 games played, he's averaged 35 points, 15 rebounds, and 65% from the field. Those are Wilt Chamberlain numbers. Really impressive to see from Anthony Davis. He's kind of turned this season around for the LA Lakers and become the horse for that team. We'll see what happens going forward here with him and LeBron. But, some people say you can't trust AD to stay healthy, and I see what you mean there. Even with him sitting out with flu-like symptoms, you can't really blame a guy for that. But at the same time, Anthony Davis has been on an absolute tear of late. Who's not? I'm going with Marvin Bagley III, the former second overall pick, the starting center for the Detroit Pistons. Over his last 3 games, Marvin has averaged 4 points, 3.5 rebounds, 0 assists while shooting 31% from the field. That's not good, Marvin. You're going to have to step it up or you're going to lose your job over there in Detroit. All right, let's talk about the Bears here. The Bears drop another game to the Green Bay Packers. Bears lose 19-28. Another sad year to be a Bears fan, having to watch Rodgers come into town and give it to us. I know some fans were rooting for the Bears to lose for draft picks. I don't really follow that stuff. And at the end of the game, watching Rodgers kind of salute the fans there, that was hard to watch. Kind of smug and some of the same shit you've seen from him. He didn't really play that well, and he's playing one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst defense. So I don't really know what you're saluting for, and being cocky, you didn't really play that well, Aaron. Matt Eberflus has now lost his first 2 games against the Packers, and regardless of what the nerds on 670 and all the blog boys and all the fanboys want to say, it does matter. It matters to lose to the Packers. If you want to change the culture around here, if you want to become a winning team, you got to start beating teams, especially the Packers. Your division rival, it means something. It means something to the fans, it means something to the owners, and it means something to the players. You can't create this losing culture, and Matt Eberflus has started off his first year as a coach losing 2 games to the Packers. Another coach losing both games to the Packers. You got to have some pride. I haven't heard Matt Eberflus talk enough about having pride in his post-game interviews and having discipline and winning games. It has to be more important to this team and to this coaching staff. Some positives from the game. I thought Justin Fields had his best game as a pro. I really did. He was throwing the ball downfield with accuracy. All day was throwing the ball with accuracy. I can only remember one throw he had to David Montgomery that was pretty inaccurate and kind of wobbly. That interception to Jair Alexander that he was trying to get to St. Brown there at the end of the game. I don't really blame that on him. I thought St. Brown should have came back to the ball more. And then the one at the very end of the game that was, what are you going to do? Clock's running out. You got to get a touchdown. So I don't blame either of those interceptions on Justin too much there. I thought he had his best game as a pro. I thought the defense played pretty well, especially on third down. That makeshift secondary they had with all those guys out, I thought they played well. And I thought Matt Eberflus did have a pretty good game plan defensively. N'Keal stepped up. I've been wondering where he's been at. He was inactive here these past 4 weeks. Then he comes in against the Packers and had that huge catch, 50-yard catch, helmet catch. Really impressive to see from N'Keal. I don't know where he's been. He had some good plays against the Patriots. He had that touchdown against the Cowboys, and then Bears put him in as inactive and leave a guy like St. Brown out there. I don't really understand that. N'Keal Harry has way more potential than these guys, and you have to see what he has before the end of the season. And Bears kept him at home for reasons I don't know. Negatives from this game: defensive line continues to be a major issue, an absolute joke.
You have got to be kidding me.
Didn't get a hand on Rodgers all game. 0 pressures, 0 sacks. Only guy I'd bring back next year from this defensive line is Dominique Robinson. Justin Jones maybe too, but other than that, this has been one of the worst defensive line groups I've ever seen. Only reason I bring Dominique back is just because of the potential he has, and he's a first-round pick, but even him hasn't done anything since week 1. Another negative, the run game, and David Montgomery never really got going on Sunday. I thought David missed some holes from what I could see there on the tape. The only time they really punched it in on the red zone was after that deep ball to St. Brown. Other than that, they missed some opportunities there, and that was one of their most effective things coming into this game, and they couldn't really get it established against the Packers. And then Cairo Santos. Cairo continues to be a problem for this team. He missed another extra point, been missing extra points all year. And then that field goal that was blocked, that could have changed the game. He kicked it super soft, super low. I don't know if he's nervous and is in his head too much here, but we're going to have to look at another kicker here going forward because Cairo, like I've said, he doesn't have the lag to make those longer field goals. And if he's not going to be accurate on extra points and on the shorter field goals, get rid of him. So the Bears enter a much-needed bye week. We don't have to watch the Bears lose this Sunday. That'll be a welcome sight. When they come back, they have the hardest remaining schedule. They'll take on the Eagles first, then the Bills, then the Lions, then the Vikings. I don't anticipate the Bears winning another game here going forward, so I guess they will have that number 2 pick overall. For some fans, that's a welcome sight. All right, let's get into a sucker-free top 10 here. Sucker-free top 10. I'm doing my top 10 films of all time. Now, some of you might be saying, what are you doing, top 10 films of all time? This is a sports show. But a lot of films on this list are sports show, and what are you going to say? This is my show. I can do whatever I want.
Maybe you should start sucking cock instead of watching TV Land.
With that being said, at number 10, I'm going with the movie Above the Rim, a super underrated sports movie starring Tupac, Bernie Mac, others, Marlon Wayans. This is a really good movie, a really good soundtrack, a story of perseverance and the struggles of a young man trying to make it out of a difficult situation. If you haven't seen Above the Rim, go check that movie out. Really good basketball movie. At number 9, I'm going with the movie Unforgiven, one of the last good westerns, Clint Eastwood's last western. It also has Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman in that movie. Kind of one of those movies where you root for the bad guy, Clint Eastwood, in that whole movie. Really good final scene there where he walks into the bar. Just an overall good western movie, one of the last good westerns, Unforgiven. At number 8, I'm going with The Natural, another sports movie starring Robert Redford. Underrated movie about perseverance and taking pride in winning and doing the right thing, never giving up. Overall, really good movie. I like The Natural at number 8. At number 7, I'm going with Scarface. Al Pacino's best performance as an actor, in my opinion. You never thought he was Al Pacino the whole time. You're like, that's Tony Montana. He's another guy whose character is so despicable, but you can't help rooting for him the whole film. Ultimate story of greed and letting your head get too big, but some of the best one-liners in movie history.
Do you know what a hassa is, Frank? That's a pig that don't fly straight.
At number 6, I'm going with The Deer Hunter, starring John Cazale, Meryl Streep, Christopher Walken, and Robert De Niro. Interesting story about this movie. John Cazale, he was also in The Godfather. He died during the filming of this movie with cancer. And he was married to Meryl Streep also during the filming of this movie. Some of the best acting you'll ever see in a movie. All these guys are Oscar winners. Really good story about a bunch of young men from Pittsburgh who get sent off to Vietnam and their lives are never the same. Some of the most powerful scenes you'll ever see in a movie as well.
You want to play games? All right, I'll play your fucking games.
Hey! How do you feel now? Huh? Huh? Hey! Big shot!
At number 5, another sports movie, Raging Bull. If you haven't seen Raging Bull, you have to see it. Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. Best boxing movie of all time, in my opinion. Story of a hard-nosed Italian guy from the Bronx. No matter how many times he gets knocked down, he keeps coming back. He keeps finding another way in life. And it's an overall really good movie about perseverance. At number 4, another sports movie, Hoosiers, the best sports movie of all time, in my opinion, starring Gene Hackman. Story of a small town high school basketball team in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, who were able to beat some of the bigger schools in Indiana and win that state championship. Great story, great acting, and it's a good story about how a group can overcome anything and become great if they all put their mind to it and strive to be great. Also based on a true story. At number 3, I'm going with The Godfather Part 1, starring Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Robert Duvall, James Caan. First movie that really told the story of the Italian Mafia in America. One of the most interesting stories there are. It is based on the actual 5 families of New York. Probably the best collection of actors in a movie all put together. Like I said, overall good movie, great story, based on Mario Puzo's book, The Godfather. At number 2, I'm going with Animal House, the best comedy of all time, starring John Belushi, Peter Riegert, and others. This is the ultimate revenge story, the story of a wild fraternity who plays by their own rules and doesn't want to be part of the waspy, clean-cut nerds and other fraternities of the school. Teaches you a lot of lessons in life. Teaches you to never be a sheep and go along with groupthink. And if someone wrongs you, always get back at them. Great movie, Animal House.
The issue here is not whether we broke a few rules or took a few liberties with our female party guests. We did.
At number 1, I'm going with The Godfather Part 2. starring Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Robert Duvall, John Cazale, Diane Keaton. To me, it's simply the greatest film of all time. Continues the story of the first Godfather, but goes deeper into the mind of the new boss, Michael, played by Al Pacino, and the struggles he has of being a man who must oversee his business while also protecting his family and family honor. Has powerful lessons that I carry with me throughout my life, such as keep your friends close but your enemies closer, think as those around you think, and never go against the family. The Godfather Part 2 is the greatest film of all time. All right, let's get into some Chicago Cubs, some Chicago baseball talk here. Cubs lose Wilson Contreras in free agency to the St. Louis Cardinals. Kind of hurts that Wilson goes to the Cubs rival here. He kind of takes over for Yadier Molina. We've been having to deal with him for years now, and now we have to watch Wilson go to the St. Louis Cardinals. But I'm happy for him. I knew it wasn't going to work out here in Chicago in free agency. They probably should have traded him last year while they could have, but it didn't work out. But Cubs get going in free agency themselves by signing Cody Bellinger to a 1-year, $17 million deal. Kind of here in baseball, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. Cody is a former Rookie of the Year, a former MVP in 2019. He's kind of fallen on hard times here these last 2 years. He had some injury struggles. 2020, he only batted 185, and in 2021, he batted 215. We'll see if Bellinger can get going here again in his career. Like I said, he's kind of a Chris Bryant type story. Former Rookie of the Year, former MVP, so we'll see what happens this year and if he can get back to his old self. Cubs also sign a pitcher, Jameson Taillon, 4-year, $70 million deal. I like this guy. He's a former second overall pick of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's had some injury struggles as well. He also had cancer. He came back from that. Shows he's resilient. He played pretty well throughout his career. 3.84 ERA and a 3.75 strikeout to walk ratio, which is pretty good. And last season, he ended up pitching 177 innings for the Yankees. So he did play last year, and he played pretty good for the Yankees. I like what the Cubs are doing here, and I don't think they're done yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after one of these shortstops here in Carlos Correa or the guy from the Braves. His name's kind of slipping my mind here. Another interesting tidbit, I thought the Cubs might go after Xander Bogaerts, but he ended up signing that big contract with the Padres. 11 years, $300 million. He's already 34 years of age, so by the time that contract's done, he'll be about 45. I didn't really understand what the Padres are doing there, but the Padres are absolutely loaded. But there still are a couple of shortstop the Cubs could sign here, and I think the Cubs are starting to enter that win mode. Tom Ricketts kind of saw that the farm system was building themselves up, and he gave Jed Hoyer the green light to go ahead and sign some guys. So I don't think the Cubs are done yet there. We'll see what happens going forward. All right, let's talk about some Fighting Illini, Illinois sports. Illinois basketball got a big win against number 2 ranked Texas the other day. Illinois was coming off a loss to Maryland. Maryland was ranked 22, but that was kind of a disappointing loss. Illinois showing to be a tough team here, man. They got some big wings. Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins, Matt Meyer had a really good game against Texas, man. He was putting the handles on them, the crossover, the shooting. He looked really good. He kind of said after the game he was dealing with some injuries at the start of the season, and he's getting back to his old self. And then, like I said, Terrence Shannon, if you haven't watched this guy, he is super impressive. Really good athlete, can shoot the ball from all over, and he's just a cool, calm, collected, mild-mannered guy. So really good to see from Illinois. I like this team going forward. I actually like them a little bit more than I did the last couple years. I think they kind of relied on Kofi Cockburn too much the last 2 years, and watch out for this team going forward in the Big Ten and trying to get over that hump in the NCAA tournament. Also, Illinois football. Illinois football will be playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl on January 2nd against the 24th ranked Mississippi State team. Both teams are pretty good. Both teams have pretty good defenses. But Mississippi State's head coach, Mike Leach, I've never really liked him. You know, everybody kind of thinks he's funny and they love his little sayings after the game and stuff. I don't like him. I think he alienates his players. Talks a lot of shit about his players, you know, and their fat girlfriends and all his little antics. I don't like Mike Leach. I'd like Illinois to go into this game in Tampa on January 2nd and put it on Mississippi State. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Sucker Free Sports Talk. Like always, if you like this episode, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on all my social media platforms. And remember, if you're gonna talk sports, always keep it sucker free.